This is the ZMF Caldera Closed. This is the most expensive headphone that they currently offer. It is their first fully closed back planar magnetic design, and I've had this headphone for far too long. I want to send a big thank you to ZMF for sending this out, and they haven't bothered me once about making the review, even though I've had it for way longer than I should have. So I appreciate the grace there. Let's go ahead and jump into the review. As far as build and design go, I don't want to be too much of a broken record here when it comes to ZMF. A lot of them fit and sort of feel almost exactly the same, which if you like it is a really good thing. The wood cups here are something called zebrawood. This particular headphone is a little bit heavier than a lot of their other available options have been, but at the same time, it's fairly comfortable despite being as heavy as it is. And I think that this comes down to the amount of contact area that you have on not only the pads, but also the headband just allows for a really great design. For example, if you pull down the headphone strap, there's actually quite a bit of extra cushioning on the sides, and this helps a lot with evening the weight distribution across your head. And you really actually don't notice the weight as much as you would on another headphone that might be a lot lighter, but have worse ergonomics. This headphone comes with locking XLR connectors. Personally, I prefer non-locking 3.5s, but it does come with a pretty nice braided cable and a nice carry case. And like many ZMF headphones, this can be modded with not only different pads, but also they have an available tuning kit for this that you can either add onto your purchase or purchase separately. But I think just for the simplicity's sake, I'm gonna be reviewing this in its stock format with its stock pads, just so that you can understand what you would get right off the rip. And personally, of the available options I've tried, once again, I think that they have nailed it with their stock version. That is the best version of it, in my opinion, but your preferences may vary a little bit. When it comes to sound, to me, when I think of ZMF, this is actually a bit different. This headphone is intense, it's focused, it's slightly clinical, and it has a presence that not a lot of other ZMF headphones have. And I think this all starts with the presentation of the treble response, which has this very detailed, very sort of present approach to it. And it's not quite as dark as some of the other ZMF headphones have been. Now, what they do here is actually kind of interesting because it happens to be very detailed but smooth. And they're kind of skirting that line where it kind of just comes up enough to be kind of clinical and kind of zingy, but not quite sharp and not quite harsh. And they do a really great job of almost getting bright, but not quite being there. Now, when it comes to the totality of detail capability from treble, this isn't the most detailed even planar closed back that I've heard. I think there are a couple others that are a bit more clinical and a bit more detailed in the top end, but I think they're also a little bit brighter. So as far as like the best players for closed back planars, I think this is sort of middle of the road performance for treble. I think the timbre is going to be really nice for some, but it is a little bit more neutral than some other ZMF headphones. So if you like a really saturated and kind of really colorful timbre from your ZMF headphones, this is going to be a bit less saturated than you might be used to. The treble sort of sets the tone for this headphone, and in a way it seems more like kind of buttoned up correct style sound than I really would personally look for sound from ZMF to have. In a way, I think that does demand the higher price because it's like maybe a better technical achievement, but I think for some people they may prefer a more chilled out and relaxed experience from their ZMF. Now the mid-range is delicate and articulate, and it seems clear because of the upper mid-range and the treble performance, and voices have a lot of good fidelity to them. They don't seem dull, they don't seem inarticulate, they seem very, very clear. And there's a little bit of a boost in the lower mids as well that kind of comes through and fills out a lot of the lower end vocals and makes things sound very warm and saturated, and a voice, if recorded well, can sound very, very complete. We'll talk about sound staging in a second, but when I mentioned intensity, one of the things that is kind of unilateral across the entire sound is that the sense of focus is very internal and it's very close. There's not a super wide stage to this. It's not super open like some other headphones can be. And especially on tracks that have a heavy focus on the voice, voices just come across just so complete, and they sound so good with the kind of ZMF timbre that this offers. It's just really, really enjoyable for vocals. And most instruments, honestly, that occupy a lot of the mid-range, things like guitar, a lot of string instruments, even drums, the impact, the intensity, that can really come through and provide a sense of just really high focus, I guess. But it also comes with a slight downside where it doesn't have a lot of chill to it. It doesn't really, it's not smooth, it's not syrupy, it's not relaxed. It's just like, this is the sound and you're gonna hear it. And you know, like dislike, just depends on what you like. Now the bass is kind of surprising to me because ZMF has some of the best bass performing headphones out there, but I actually find this one at the price range that it's at, which is I think like $3,500, is kind of lacking in my opinion. And I feel like it feels a bit compressed, especially for dynamics, and doesn't quite offer enough slam for me. Headphones like the Bokeh, headphones like the SJY Horizon do a lot better for actual slam from their bass. Things like the Sony Z1R, they have a lot of slam to them, especially in these sub-bass regions, and I really don't get that from this. The bass is warm. It kind of kicks in with a good amount of kind of enjoyable kind of overall saturation, and it sounds good. And you can tell the fidelity is quite high. It's very fast sounding, but it's not particularly deep or hard hitting. So if you prefer that in your music, I would definitely look at some other ZMF headphones. This bass response again carries the impression of a very articulate headphone. Because of the intensity of the other regions and the focus of them, I actually would have liked to see a bit more sub-bass punch from this, and just a bit harder of a bass kick without having to rely on things like EQ for. One amplifier though that actually did help a lot with this and kind of chilled out some of the other properties as well and provided a kind of a strange experience for a headphone, honestly, but a good one, was the Mogwai SE from Amps and Sound. That was a really awesome combo with this. I felt like it did a lot of the this headphone justice, honestly. The sound staging here, I've already kind of spoiled. It doesn't have a lot, and I think that for the asking price, that's actually kind of bad. I wish it would have a wider stage to it. Something that didn't sound closed would be nice. But this headphone does sound noticeably closed. Because of that, you're getting just a really high, I keep using the word intensity, but I feel like that's the best way to describe it, where sound is happening and you're gonna hear it. It's gonna play straight to your brain. And I think that in some cases, in some songs, this is exactly what that song needs, is that power and that authority to really like push the sound to you and kind of like, you know, in a way like hammer it into your head, so to speak, without sounding harsh, but it's very, very focused and not as chill as some other ZMF headphones. So again, depending on what you're used to, this could offer a nice kind of difference from that, or it could be maybe something that's a bit more aggressive than you might normally prefer. So who is this headphone for? I think because of what it offers, what it's good at, and what other things in the market are good at, the person I would really recommend this for is somebody who really wants a lot of different sounds, but wants to stay in the ZMF house of sounds. Somebody who wants this style of a boutique, really kind of one-of-a-kind type of headphone, something that has this kind of styling and aesthetic, and also has a bit of a brand loyalty to ZMF, which there's nothing wrong with having that. The type of person this is not for is somebody who is seeking like the most analytical, the most clinical, and the most like forensic experience that they can get from their headphones. If they're seeking those maximum details, I think that there are headphones that just do it a little bit better. They do it different, but I think that they're a little bit better at extracting all those maximum details. As far as my conclusion, this honestly wouldn't be my first pick from ZMF. I prefer the much cheaper and much warmer and much less correct sounding ZMF Bokeh. It's just the right headphone for me, and that's just up to my preference. I do appreciate that as a brand though, they're offering a lot of different sound options, and you can really find something that kind of fits and aligns with what you like, especially if you go try them at shows or something. Because this is so much different than something like a Bokeh that, while I like the Bokeh, I think a lot of other people might way prefer the Caldera Closed. And that's kind of cool to see from a brand, because a lot of brands kind of get sort of funneled into one type of sound, and they try to make a bunch of different headphones and they try to make all those headphones sound like slight variations of like the same general sound signature. And in some cases, I think it's because they're maybe a little bit limited in their tuning capability, but also maybe a little bit afraid to make a mistake. But ZMF is willing to kind of take more risks, and I really respect that as a brand. They'll put out headphones that sound really clinical and clear like this. They'll put out stuff that sounds really warm and saturated and fun like the Bokeh, and they'll put out headphones that just kind of sound a little weird like the Ori. And all three of those options are perfectly okay, just depending on what you like. So thanks so much, ZMF, for sending this out. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing the Bokeh Open review, finally. That's another one I've been delaying. I apologize, but we're getting to it, I promise. All right, bye.